What's going on, guys? No Guides here. Welcome back to another video. Now in today's video we're going to go with a 4-5-1. In my opinion, naturally one of the most solid formations in a game and one of the best solely because of its natural shape. Now it defends in a 4-5-1, which is very hard to achieve with other formations, so defensively it's really solid, but when you're attacking it becomes like a 4-3-3. So it's almost like a 4-3-3, 4-5-1 hybrid, but we'll get on to the transitions in a second. The reason why this formation is so solid defensively is the 3 centre mids. Now what the 3 centre mids do is they normally, when you're defending, they're normally outside your box. And what your opponents will try to do is they'll try to always do a through ball, try to do a 1-2, and try to commit a player forward in between the two CDMs. Traditionally in a 4-2-3-1, you've seen that defensively most people use a 4-2-3-1, but your opponent will try to get in between it. But with the 4-5-1, because you've got the 3 centre mids and all 3 of them on cover centre, it almost creates like a barricade in front of your box. And if you have 3 good players, 3 defensive minded players, you're almost going to get the ball most of the time, because naturally speaking not many people are used to breaking up 3 players, only used to breaking up 2. So defensively it's really solid. You have the left mid and right mid, they kind of tuck inside, so you have the defensive 4-5-1. Now the reason why this formation works so well is that naturally, because the natural formations of 4-5-1, it kind of cheats the system. What I mean by that is, now if you guys seen the 4-4-2, now 4-4-2 is just a good example, right? Now EA in their second patch, they made a situation where even if you put, let's say in this situation I put my 2 strikers on comeback and defense, let's say I put my 2 strikers on comeback and defense, in the game they won't come back and defense. You will see in the game you'll have your 2 strikers on stay forward. Now why does that happen? It's because EA released a patch so you can't have more than 4 midfielders in midfield. So if you have comeback and defense on your other 2 strikers, they're not going to come back and defend. That's what was changed in the second patch that came out that EA released. However, with the 4-5-1, because its natural shape has 3 centre mids and then you have the 2 left mid and right mids, it kind of cheats the system, and that's how you create the 5 midfielder line. As you can see on the screen right now, this is from the game. As you can see, both my left mid and right mid are kind of on the wing areas on comeback and defense, and then you have the 3 centre mids in the middle, which makes the back 5. So defensively there's not that many formations that can really match towards this. As I said, also when you're attacking, you also outnumber your opponent. If your opponent, for example, is dropping back and you want to punish him, all you can do is you just pass around the box with the 3 centre mids, and you have your left wing and right wing and your striker up front. It almost creates a distraction, almost for good. It's really good for possession play. So if you want to hold the ball, if you want to kind of pass the ball around and kind of outsmart your opponent on the possession side, you can do that very well with this formation. But without further ado, let's just go straight into the tactics. Now, the defensive style we've gone with balanced. As I said, this is typically a formation to kind of close the game out. I don't think it's wise to use anything else. You can use drop back if you really want to, but I think because you have 3 centre mids already in midfield, I think it's almost pointless using drop back in my opinion. I think it will almost be counterproductive because you have the 3 centre mids covering outside of your box. So there's no point giving your opponent space. But if you can use drop back if you really want to, but I would go with balanced. I wouldn't really use any of the attacking options just for the sole purposes. Although it can be played like a 4-3-3 when you're attacking, I really wouldn't touch those in my opinion. I just think this is information mainly for closing the game out and kind of getting the win. Now with the width we've gone with 4. The reason why is the 4-5-1 is naturally quite a wide formation. Now in the game the left mid and right mid, they will kind of tuck inside just a little bit. Now there might be a small gap between your right centre mid and your right mid and your left centre mid and your left mid. It's because the 3 centre mids are on cover centre. I'll get to that in a second. There might be a slight gap, but it shouldn't be too much of an issue. As you see, for example, in this clip, there's like a little bit of a gap that you might have noticed. But normally speaking, the left mid and right mid, they tuck in depending on where the players go. So that's how we've gone with a width of 4. You can, if you really want to, have a width of 2. This does make the formation extremely OP. It does emulate overload the ball side, but obviously I wouldn't recommend it. And in all honesty, a very good player is going to exploit you down the wings anyway. So I think it's almost counterproductive going down to lower than 4 in my opinion, since you already have the 3 centre mids. Now the depth, I've gone with 3. As it is with depth, it's a debatable topic. If you are going to use drop back, one thing I would say is maybe go with a depth of 4 or 5. That's what I would say if you're using drop back. If you're not using drop back, let's just say you want to keep it on balance like how I have it, I would say keep the depth on 3. I think it's honestly one of the best steps to use, both for offensively. You don't get kind of caught out too much and your players are at a somewhat of a decent length to be able to go forward. But I think obviously defensively, this is the main way that defines the formation. You want to be defensively solid. And as I said, You don't want to give too much space to your opponent outside the box in this vicinity. So that's why I wouldn't really go high. I would say 3 is kind of the perfect balance, and then the 3 centre mids kind of tuck inside, just outside the penalty arc. So that's why I would go with a depth of 3. You've probably seen that a lot. Now, defensive style possession. Now, I play a possession-based football. In this clip, for example, you can see the left mid and right mid. In this one, I have them on. We'll get onto this into a second, but as you can see, they're kind of a bit out of the game. As you can see in the first couple of minutes, they're quite wide. In contrast, if you compare it to this clip over here, the players are much more short. This is because they have the cut inside instruction, but it's also because they're on possession. Now, personally, I think possession is good because you can control the game. As I said, this is a formation to control the game. So if your opponent, for example, as you can see on the screen, if he decides to park the bus and he's losing, you can just pass the ball around in midfield because you have the 3 centre mids. You're going to have superiority in midfield compared to most teams. So I would probably go with possession. If you struggle with possession, I would go balanced. I wouldn't really go towards the rest of them. I think balanced and possession is the best. I think fast build-up play, long ball is alright, but fast build-up play, I really wouldn't kind of go towards it at all. I would just typically use balance or possession. This is one of the best formation I would say for possession, just because you have a lot of players in midfield and they always come short. Now with attacking width, we've gone a bit on the high side to 6. What you can do for the more advanced players, you can lower the width and use hug the sidelines if you really want to. But for the most general of you, I'll just say the width of 6, because as I said, when you're attacking, you don't want to be too secluded towards the middle of the pitch, and you kind of want these 3 centre mids spread out. You don't want them to be too tight in the middle of the pitch, too packed together. So that's why I've gone with a higher width, just to kind of separate the midfield 3 out, because if you're trying to waste time against your opponent, you don't want them to be so knit and tight close together, because then the space between your 3 centre mids, let's just say, and your left mid and right mid will be too far, and you don't want to be caught in between these lines. So I wouldn't really go towards too much of a high attacking width, because when you are attacking and you do lose the ball, that transition probably will get caught, depending on how you play. So a width of 6, that would be kind of a best of everything. Players in that box has gone with 3. As I said, you don't really want to be going forward too much. We have all the players still on the edge of the box anyway, so this doesn't really matter too much. But as I said, if you really want to exploit and put your opponent under pressure, just pass the ball around your opponent's box. Most of the time they will submit to the pressure and drag a player out of position. You can easily capitalize. Corners and free kicks on 1 because it's a defensive formation. I really wouldn't increase this for obvious reasons. I think 1 on corners works well if you want to kind of time manage in the latter end if your opponent is, I suppose you can say, still parking the bus if he is losing. Now going over to the instructions. Now we have the strike on comeback and offense, get in behind and drift wide. This is mainly just for the counter attack, because the actual, as you can see, the offensive style is possession. The reason we want to put him on getting behind is we don't always want Mane to come close. Sometimes when you win the ball defensively, you want to have a player up front making a runner behind. So if you leave this play unbalanced, the problem is you might come short sometimes. Now, if you're getting pinned in your box and you get the ball back, you want to kind of pass the ball to someone like your striker. So I put them on drift wide and I have them on get it behind. So when you do lose the ball, let's say you're defending and you win the ball back, Mane can kind of drift wide into a position depending where he is, and you can kind of lob the ball to Mane. You won't have to worry about him coming close or losing the ball, especially if you're getting pressed or you're getting pinned. So that's how I've gone with that. You can come back on offense, you can use it. All comeback on offense is going to do is going to make Mane just a bit more reserved. So he won't literally come back and make this a back line of 6. He'll just be just in front. So for example, as you can see in this clip over here, I drag Mane, or I select Mane manually. I select him and I bring him back to defend with him. And that's one thing I like with Mane on comeback and defense, because he's a bit further back, and this way helps break up your opponent's attack from, I suppose you can say, from the defensive position where your opponent's CDMs would be. So he's good for pressing that way. Now in terms of attacking, the left mid and right mid, they're both on comeback and defense. Now remember, even though they're on comeback and defense, when they go forward, it's going to be a 4-3-3. So how it converts into a 4-3-3 when you're attacking is that these guys, they don't stay. You can't put them on stay back. They have to kind of come back. So you end up having this a left wing, right wing, a striker, and then you have the 3 centre mids. So basically it ends up becoming a 4-3-3. The left mid and right mid, they will take some time to get into the space, so do bear that in mind. And that's what I would say. That's kind of the way I would play it. Now, one thing I would say to you is just on that note, you can put cut inside, as I mentioned, for example, going back to this clip. If you want to use cut inside, you can, and these players will just be a bit more closer towards you in the box. That way you might have a good attacking option inside the box. But the only downside with kind of cut inside is sometimes you might lose the outlet player on the wing. Just do bear that in mind. Also, you can put them on getting behind if you want them to make runs in behind, but I'll honestly trigger this with the LB or the L1 button. Remember, if the player instructions on balance, the support runs, because it's on possession, the players are going to come close naturally. So if you really want, you can put this on getting behind, but I'll leave it on balanced. But the main thing you want to choose is either use cut inside or not. Stay on the edge of the box is what we use, because I said when you're in a wing position, you kind of want to pass around the box rather than go into the box, I think. And I think sometimes they still go into the box, sometimes depending on the situation. They don't always stay. So it's not like you're going to have no one inside the box. So the edge of the box doesn't really work as well as you think, but it's more just like when you get the ball in the wing position and you want to work the ball around the box, you can do so. Now, that's both the left mid and right mid, both on comeback and defense as well. So this way, as I said, when you're defending, they kind of just help and tuck in just in front of your wing back, so left back and right back, so you don't get doubled up. Now, the three centre mids, all three of them are on stay back while attacking, stay edge of the box, and cover centre. The reason for this is you want them to all be on cover centre, because what happens is that when you're defending, you want them to be in the middle. Now, occasionally, let's say, for example, when you're attacking in a 4-3-3, let's say in this case, Salah and Aubameyang are really high up the pitch. If you do lose the ball in midfield, what Sissoko will do, and Trent in this situation, your left mid, right in the mid, they will kind of split up momentarily, and they'll kind of occupy the kind of a right centre mid position. Then once Salah kind of returns back into this position, then it will be back to normal again. So the whole idea is that they just kind of separate momentarily. Once Salah kind of comes back and defends the right flank, then Sissoko will go back on the inside again. As you can see in this clip, Sissoko just drifts wide just to kind of carry the run. So even though he is on cover centre, he does still cover the wing. Still edge of the box again, same thing. We don't want to get done on the counter attack, as I said, to close the game out. And conservative deception is what we used, because I just think, personally, in my opinion, I don't want these players moving around too much. You can put this on balance if you really want to, but that's what I would say. One final thing I want to say as well is interceptions. You can put one of these players on drop between defenders. So this way, when this is only when you're attacking. Remember, drop between defenders is only an attacking support. So when you're attacking, what happens is one of your CDMs, in this case Sissoko, I'd recommend the right centre mid. I'll explain why in a second. Sissoko drops in, you kind of momentarily create a back five, and then what happens is when you're attacking, you basically attack with Trent and Kante in centre mid, and then you almost have like a diamond 4-3-3. So you kind of have Sissoko dropping in, and then when Sissoko drops in, you kind of have the left centre mid and right centre mid kind of advancing around Sissoko. So this is one thing that you can do if you want to create that extra, just a backup player, just to reinforce the back line. So if you do get counter attacked, you will have player on drop between defenders. But bear in mind, if you do that, you might be susceptible when you're attacking to losing that extra centre mid and losing the majority or the superiority midfield. So do bear that in mind. But I would say don't use your centre mid, use your right centre mid, in my opinion, because if you use a centre mid, it kind of messes up with the game. And I think sometimes it's better for the centre mid to be in this position naturally. So when the right centre mid does go back into position again, there's not a hole. Because if, for example, you move this player to drop between defenders, let's say you recover the ball back, there might be a momentarily a hole in the middle. So that's why I don't recommend it. Now, the rest of the players, left back and right back, are on stay back while attacking. As I said, there's no point having these guys on balanced or whatever. If you want to trigger them forward, you really want to, then you can use the deep pad tactics. The most important thing is if you do trigger them forward, you want to put them on overlap. This is only if you're going to attack with this formation in a 4-3-3, because then what happens is when these guys overlap, you want a situation where these guys will overlap, and the left center mid, the right mid and the left mid, they'll kind of cut inside. So kind of typical how teams play in real life. The fullbacks overlap, the left mid and right mid, they kind of cut inside, and you kind of get this narrow 4-3-3. But just do bear in mind, if you really want to do the fullbacks on joint attack, you need to have one your CDMs on drop between defenders, just so you ensure that stability in the defensive position when you are going forward. Anyway guys, that is the 4-5-1 second variation. A very good formation, very stable formation. And I say naturally one of the best formations. There isn't really any formations that compete with it. The 4-1-4-1 is, you can argue, a more defensive formation, but I think just for the balance of play, I do think the 4-5-1 is a bit better. It's kind of the same thing anyway. I mean, if you really like the instruction of CDM on, you can do cut passing lanes, stay back while attacking if you really want that CDM. But I just don't like the way the formation lines up in game. There's kind of like the back line 4. Then is like a kind of a separate row for the CDM, and then you have your midfield 4. So you kind of have 3 rows of defense. I prefer just to have 2 rows of defense, and maybe just one the center but just being a bit more behind. So that's why I go with a 4-5-1. Anyway guys, thank you very much for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you do have any other questions, do let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget, I stream on twitch.tv/nilguides, and hope you're all doing well. Do be very careful with the coronavirus, of course. Anyway guys, thank you very much for watching. Take it easy and I'll catch you next one. Peace out.